I'm back. I'm going to do another page one critique. Um, I've done a video very recently, so I don't actually have any big news apart from I forgot to say that I'd seen the draft for the cover of the book that wouldn't burn, and it's a piece of work by artist Tom Roberts, not to be confused with artist Tom Roberts, who was famous in the I don't know 1840s or something. He's the one who always comes up if you Google Tom Roberts. But it's a wonderful image, and I look forward to seeing what the final version looks like, and then hopefully I'll be able to share it with you guys. But since the book release isn't till May, despite my enthusiasm for sharing all things to do with the library trilogy, it's still a way off. So, you might notice the bookshelves are looking a bit bare back there. With any luck, we're going to move this year. So, and in the nearish future, it's a saga that's dragged out, but now we're sort of slowly starting to pack. Hopefully, that will not be in vain. This page one critique today is it's of a page one that I felt needed a lot of work. And when you're doing a critique of somebody's work, honesty is the most valuable currency that you can spend. The hard thing when you're a writer is to get anyone to be honest about your work. You, especially when you're starting out, you show these things to friends and family, and they may well not be interested at all, and they certainly don't have any interest in hurting your feelings. And so they just say, "Oh, that's great. I love that. That's wonderful," and move on. And to get an honest critique is very difficult. You really want a stranger who doesn't have any qualms about hurting your feelings. And the place I sought these out was in online critique groups, where you would swap, writers would post things and you would critique other people's work. That's why they would critique you back. And in some critique groups, that's formalized. You have to do this number of critiques before you can put up a piece of work for critique. And in others, it's an informal thing. And even in those groups, because people like to get praise rather than criticism, there is a tendency for little cliques to form where they're just sort of mutual back scratching, and it forms maybe a useful psychological service for people who are just looking for approval, and why not? But if you want to get better, then you need to have people, when they see something that they don't like or they think is wrong, to say so. And obviously there are different lines. You can easily offend people. This is the reason I don't tend to critique people's work, because people send me stuff all the time and say, please read this and tell me what you think. And there's no percentage in it for me whatsoever, because the great majority of people aren't sort of emotionally equipped to handle proper critique of their writing. Writing is something you put a lot of emotion into. It's like your baby. And then although you're offering it up for critique, you really don't want anyone to tell you your baby's ugly. Worse still, you don't want them to take a scalpel and start cutting pieces off it. And so the normal effect of an honest critique, statistically speaking, is just to piss someone off and make an enemy for life. What's the point in that? And even when people come to you and they say, "Oh no, I've got thick skin, I don't," generally speaking, they don't, and it's a lie. Maybe not a intentional lie, but they're not prepared for critique. All of which means that critiquing is a dangerous business, and you have to be careful about how you phrase things. You have to think about the human on the other side of the equation. You're trying to help them with your honesty, but you're also not trying to demolish them. And that's an exhausting business, trying to find that level. At the critique group that I ran for many years on Yahoo Groups was advertised at the top that your feelings are not going to be a priority here, that this is a group that deals in honesty, People here are just pleaded with to just say what they think, and not worry about the mental well-being, if you like, of the people on the other side. And the strong advice there was, if you are someone who is not going to benefit from this, don't join the group, don't put your work up. And even so, there was a continuous undercurrent of disgruntlement, and continuous improvement in people's writing. And people came from that group and went on to, in various cases, quite good things. And it certainly helped me a lot to have some unvarnished opinion. And you've got to also have skin thick enough to allow some of those critiques through, but not to allow too many through, not to be hurt by them, or even too steered by them. You've got to listen and not put too much stock in any one person's opinion. You have to, if you get the same thing said by many people, then maybe it's something you should listen to. If any one person says something about it, then just take it with a pinch of salt. There are plenty of successful books out there that I would have read and said, well, maybe you should do this instead, and it wouldn't have been particularly commercial advice, maybe. Anyway, all of that to say that in this critique, because I felt the work needed a lot of changes and improvements, I've got a lot of things to say that might feel harsh, and all I can do is point everyone at this lengthy standard disclaimer here that says it's intended to help, and that people were invited to send these pages in on the basis that this was the sort of level of critique that they would be getting. Right, I may as well just get on and read it. Oh, let's zip to the top. It is by Mark Esba, and the book that it may have come from doesn't have a title. And I couldn't find Mark Esba on Goodreads, so maybe he hasn't published anything yet. A calm forest doesn't mean a safe forest. It was during a tranquil afternoon when a group of 5 campers drifted through the woodlands in the north. It's about to get pretty dark soon, Herman muttered to himself while observing through his blue eyes the tangerine twilight between a gap that the giant trees made, an orangish eye watching them from above. Then he turned his head back. We should find a place to set up camp, he spoke loudly, reminding his companions, who were trailing his lead like a snake pattern. Herman meant it to sound more like a warning. You mean we should find a flat area, somewhere near a source of water? Gustav confirmed cheerfully, while standing at the end of the zigzag. He always thought to know what others indicate about. What if we don't find that place? Evelyn disputed clearly. She and Gustav engaged a year ago. We'll be eaten by a pack of wolves or a bear, perhaps, Gustav replied, mimicking a wild beast and howling. Everyone laughed nervously at his joke. And somewhere in the vast forest, a pack of wolves grinned and giggled, exposing their plain white fangs, sharp ivory knives. Half an hour passed, and the campers were still straying between the trees, avoiding the darker paths, unaware that in the twinkling of an eye all paths will turn out the same. Another half hour, and the night had spread its moonless wings all over the forest. That's quite a short page one, but that was what was sent in. A calm forest doesn't mean a safe forest, so that's it's a decent first line. It carries a hint of threat with it, or promise of some interest. And then it was during a tranquil afternoon when a group of 5 campers drifted through the woodlands in the north. So that's a passive sentence. It was passive language is well, I don't know if there's a technical definition of it, but basically when you start to see was crop up a lot, then you've got passive language going on, and it's not, generally speaking, a good idea. It doesn't engage particularly well. This line has no point of view. And when it says in the north, if you're going to be generic, then either don't bother or put something specific. Something specific makes it feel more real, you know. So I would either go like something specific, like the forests of True, or I wouldn't say anything at all, but just the north, so on. And here, it's about to get dark pretty soon, Herman muttered to himself, yada yada. Um, I'm always saying it's good to have some dialogue, so hooray. But there's lots of bad things here. The structure of the sentence, it's a very long, rambling one. I break it up. It's about to get pretty dark soon, Herman muttered, and then full stop. He watched, carry on. And this is just full of color description. It's omniscient. We feel that it's probably supposed to be in Herman's point of view. And yet we're getting information about the color of his eyes. I never think about the color of my eyes. I never see the color of my eyes. And even if it was from someone outside, one of his companions, it seems a strange time to notice. And then we just keep being hit by colors: the tangerine, the blue, the orangish, and every single noun here has an adjective stuck on it, and that's an error that many writers make at the start, that feel that every time they put down a noun, they need to qualify it with an adjective in order to make it interesting. I've used this analogy before, but adjectives are like spice, and if you put one in front of every noun, that's too much spice for almost everyone's taste. So we've got the blue eyes, the tangerine twilight, the giant trees, the orangish eye. Some of those just don't need an adjective next to them, and some of these adjectives are pretty trees are big things anyway, and unless these are spectacularly big trees, then they're just trees. And it feels really like he's describing what twilight is to me. It's about to get dark soon. You could stop there. I know all the rest is a bit of waffle. You could talk about the sun going down and the colors, but this is page one. I want something that compels me, that's interesting, that's unique, that I can't put down. And being told about the sun going down and the color of his eyes and the size of the trees, none of that is particularly engaging to me. And then he's talking about setting up camp, and all of this is just, to me, rather wordy and just basically wasting space. He could say, we should find a place to set up camp, he called. The call embodies the fact that it's spoken loudly for the benefit of his companions. Sorry about all the coughing. I just lost my voice there for a second. He's got 4 people following him, so I'm not quite sure how they make a snake pattern. Basically going to be a pretty much a line. And he's started a sentence there with the word then. That's rarely a good idea, and this isn't one of the places that it is a good idea. The sharp-eyed among you may notice a slight jump in the video at this point. I am experimenting with some editing software, and I reconsidered the last part of this video. So this will be a replacement section. How I was saying that then is not a good way to start a sentence in general. And this particular sentence, then he turned his head to the back. How about he looked back? And the next piece, he spoke out loudly. How about he called? It's all just a bit too wordy. Many lines in this piece that could be compressed and have just the same amount of effect. In fact, have a better effect. We go back to this description of the snake pattern. I mean, again, it's wordy, it's redundant. 4 people can't snake, and really, who cares? And Herman meant it to sound more like a warning, so we're in Herman's head again. And why not? He warned. There's many parts here where one thing is said, and then the rest of the sentence is explaining what's been said at the start of the sentence. Just have some faith in your readers. we go on and we talk about this zigzag that we've had a snake and now a zigzag with these four people who are following him. And this guy, Gustav, is basically just repeating what the first guy said, but slightly more pedantically. He's explaining what a campsite is. To be generous, it's telling us something about Gustav's pedantic nature, but it doesn't seem to be earning its place on page one. And here, he always thought to know what others indicate about. Now, this just doesn't sound like English to me. I mean, people don't speak like this. This isn't how you'd put that line together. I really don't know what to say about that. And the following line is also oddly worded. What if we don't find that place? Evelyn disputed clearly. Disputed clearly? I mean, he's not disputing anything. The word asked. Evelyn asked. That would do it. Don't go this as a sidestep. Adverbs in dialogue tags. Stephen King, in his book on writing, goes on to a rant about how bad they are. And J.K. Rowling, who's been moderately successful in her writing, uses dialogue adverbs in dialogue tags all the time. He said testily, she said angrily. They can be easily overdone. I agree with King on that. Use them very sparingly. Don't struggle to find alternatives to the word said. The word said's great. The word asked is great. This is part of the mechanics of dialogue, and the reader becomes blind to them. Don't worry, you've said too many times. People just see it as a tag. They don't actually enunciate it in their head, and they don't need to have alternatives to make it more interesting, like disputed, opined, any number of these things. And then they certainly don't need to have an adverb tagged on the end to explain the way in which they did it. If you write your dialogue well enough, it will be obvious that the person is angry or argumentative or sarcastic. Then some information about the woman and Gustav being engaged. I'm saying, who's telling me this, and why should I care, really? The only interesting thing so far is that there's some potential danger in the woods, and I want to know more about that. Don't introduce me to all five of these companions, or four of these companions, and the main guy. So this line is actually a decent line, because I'm always asking for dialogue, and we've got some here, so I can't complain about it too bitterly. He's speculating, which is always interesting, and he's showing some character. He's doing mimicking. He's being humorous. So yeah, this is a line of dialogue that gives us something about the character who's saying it. But we go straight back into something that's a bit redundant. Everyone laughed nervously. Stop there. We know it's a joke. Don't tell us at his joke. That's just wasting words. And somewhere in the vast forest, a pack of wolves grinned and giggled, exposing their plain white fangs, sharp ivory knives. So we have, using the omniscient point of view, zoomed out away from our collection of people who are talking, and then zoomed into some potentially distant part of the forest and looked at some wolves. Why are the wolves giggling or grinning at anything? Because it's not implied that they're right next to them listening to the conversation and understanding it. Giggling is wolves can grin, sure, they show their teeth, but giggling just sounds a bit silly. And now we've moved from having one adjective per noun to having a bunch. Plain white fangs, sharp ivory knives. So that's two for each noun. It's just too many. And if you're going to throw in adjectives, make sure they're adjectives that do something useful. Plain and white are things we expect from fangs, possibly slightly yellow, but knives are sharp. Teeth are made of ivory. These are not adjectives that are adding anything to the process. Make them earn their keep when you use an adjective. Knives. And given that these this somewhere implies that these wolves could be miles off. What are they reacting to? Some bloke just said, "Oh, we might be attacked," and then feels like a mile or two off. Some wolves are laughing about it. It's not clear what's going on. Wolves can grin, they can expose their fangs, but giggling just sounds a bit silly in this context. And when you are using these adjectives, the plain white, put adjectives in when they have something to add. I expect a wolf's teeth to be white or yellowish, so there's no point telling me. Just use the word fangs, and I get the plain and the white. I know they're made out of ivory, and I know they're sharp, and I know that teeth can be like knives. So all of that is pretty much pointless. You could say something far more condensed. Deep among the trees, wolves raised their noses to the wind. The pack leaders grin, exposed a mouthful of sharp ivory. I'm leaning into this need to describe the wolf's teeth to you, but even so, I feel I've done it there in a much more condensed way. And we move on, and we're still in the Omni POV, and we're talking about a half hour passing, and then another half hour passing. We're talking about things that the campers are unaware of. We're looking forwards. We're foreshadowing. We're using information. They're going to be in trouble. They don't know it yet. These are generally not very productive ways of storytelling. They actually feel more childish, more sort of fairy tale. You see them a lot more in fairy tales and children's literature, where you do this sort of thing. And we end with which is actually quite a nice line. I would, but again, I'd leave the specific time lumps out, the half an hour, unless we don't even know what period we're in here properly. But half an hour feels like a watch thing. It's better to be talking about time in these circumstances in terms of things like failing light, lengthening shadows, miles crossed maybe, but just, what are we going to do? Devolve into 15 minutes, and it's not ideal, I don't feel. But the night spreading its moonless wings, I would ditch you all but over the forest. That's fine. That's a nice enough line of prose. So as I warned, this all does feel quite harsh, and I'm not intending it to upset anyone. I'm just Mark has invited this critique, and this is hopefully helping him to get better. And if 5 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, if he felt that it wasn't any help, then the best thing to do is to simply ignore it and move on down your own path. I believe that he was perfectly receptive to the review. To address the overall page one, story-wise, so it had problems on a line-by-line version, but it's also lacking story-wise. What do we know? We know that 5 people are walking into a forest. We've got some names for them, and the fact they're chatting to each other a bit and about to make camp. There is an implied threat of wild animals attacking them, but we've got no, apart from the author pushing that on us, we've got no real reason to believe that's a great threat, because wolves are typically not attacking people. These are 5 healthy adults. Seems an unlikely target for wolves, and I don't care about them anyway. Let the wolves eat them. He's done nothing really to make me think that these are interesting people that I would care about one way or the other. So I would have, if I was going to go down this path with people walking into a forest, I would focus heavily on one character. If I didn't need the others, I wouldn't have them at all. But if I needed them later, I'd have them, but I'd introduce them in more later. I would just be in the head of this person, maybe give me that person's speculation and concerns and worries about the situation, that they are maybe they're lost, maybe there is a real problem with wolves attacking people in this area. maybe the forest has a dark reputation, something more concrete that I can get concerned about because of the threatic proses, and more time spent with making this one or two people interesting and sympathetic, so that I care a bit if they get eaten by wolves. And so those things, combined with tightening the language and changing the focus of it, and maybe if he's not completely sold on using an omniscient point of view, then I would say step away from that and use a POV. That would help engage the reader. The trouble with omniscient is it's quite distancing. It's quite hard it's harder to empathize with the situation of a character if you can just jump out of their head and then get an overview and know things they don't know. It's much more claustrophobic. If you are stuck in the situation with that character, you can't leave their head. You can't know what they don't know. You have to listen to their speculations and worry. That's the power of a point of view. Omniscient has compensatory things, but I don't feel those compensatory things are being used here on this page one. That's me done. I will leave you guys to it and start my hunt for how to end the video. Cheers.